because my parents always favored her over me. I, 32M, have a younger sister Sarah, 28F, who has always been the favorite child of our parents growing up. Even as little kids, it was obvious that our parents, especially our mom, favored Sarah and gave her more attention, praise, gifts, etc. I was frequently criticized for not being as smart, talented or successful as Sarah. Our parents always bragged to friends and family about Sarah's accomplishments but didn't seem to care much about mine. The favoritism got worse when we were teenagers. When Sarah got into her dream college, my parents threw her a huge party and bought her a car. When I got into my top choice college, they said congratulations and that was it. Sarah got a free ride from my parents through college and grad school and even received a generous fun money allowance from them every month. I had to take out massive student loans and work jobs during school to pay my own way. Whenever I tried to talk to my parents about the blatant favoritism towards Sarah, they would get very defensive and claim I was imagining things. According to them, she was just more motivated and ambitious than me, so of course she would accomplish more to be proud of. Over the years, this clear preferential treatment took a toll on my self-esteem and relationship with my family. I distanced myself from my parents once I was financially independent. I still see or talk to them on holidays and special occasions, but I kept my contact minimal. Meanwhile, Sarah remained very close with them. Now my sister is getting married, and my parents are completely absorbed in the wedding planning. They are shelling out well over $30,000 to pay for a huge, fancy wedding for her next month. Of course I was invited, but honestly, I feel no desire to attend. I am happy for Sarah that she has found a great fiancé, but the thought of spending a weekend celebrating with my parents and watching them fawn all over her makes me feel ill. Plus, with all that Sarah's elaborate wedding is costing, my parents said they cannot also help pay for my own upcoming wedding next year. I am engaged to my long-term girlfriend. I was hoping my parents could contribute at least a little to help with the costs, but they said with Sarah's wedding expenses this year, their budget was too tight. However, they again emphasized that I was still welcome to attend Sarah's wedding. I spoke to my fiancée about this, and she understands why I am so reluctant to go to the wedding. While she knows I should try to take the high road, she agreed that my parents' lifelong favoritism is hurtful and attending the wedding would likely just bring up bad memories. When I mentioned my doubts about attending to my mom, she got very upset. She said Sarah would be devastated if I didn't come, and that I was just being spiteful and petty. Some other family members have also been reaching out telling me it would cause drama and hard feelings if I didn't show up as part of the family. While I don't want to ruin Sarah's happy day, the thought of spending so much time around my parents is depressing. I still haven't decided what to do, but I can't help feeling like my family only wants me there so they can pretend that everything is great. Against my better judgment, I decided to suck it up and attend Sarah's wedding. My fiancé encouraged me to take the high road, so I agreed to go, but I was dreading the favoritism and tension. Sure enough, as soon as we got there, my parents were fawning all over Sarah while barely acknowledging me and Jen, my fiancé. My mom pulled me aside early on and lectured me about needing to be more supportive of Sarah on her big day. It set the tone that this was all about Sarah as usual. The hatred came to a head at the rehearsal dinner. Sarah made a passive-aggressive toast implying that she hoped Jen and I could have a fraction of the happiness she has with her new husband someday. It was a clear dig at our relationship. When I called her out on it afterwards, she denied any ill intent and said I was just being oversensitive as always. My mom took Sarah's side, criticizing me for making a scene and ruining Sarah's night with my negativity. I felt like the black sheep all over again. Sarah was back to her spoiled brat ways, and my parents were totally enabling her terrible behavior toward Jen and me. I honestly wanted to just pack it up and leave at that point. But Jen talked me down, reminding me to not let them get to me. The next day was the wedding itself. I tried to put on a brave face, but it was torture sitting through the 3-hour ceremony listening to my parents give gushing speech after speech praising Sarah. Meanwhile, they barely said 2 words to Jen or I the entire weekend. After the reception, Jen and I decided to head back to our hotel and skip the Sunday brunch, as we had had enough mistreatment. As we were leaving, Sarah smugly told me no hard feelings if you don't stay, I know how jealous you were of me having my perfect day. I couldn't even dignify that with a response. So, in summary, I'm glad I went through with attending to take the high road. But my sister and parents' behavior just reinforced why distancing myself from their toxicity is for the best. At least now Jen has seen their true colors too. We're heading home early to get away from the drama. I just feel sorry for Sarah's husband marrying into this messed up family dynamic. Well, it has been a couple of weeks since Sarah's disastrous wedding, and I am still processing everything that went down. Jan and I were so relieved to get back home and put that toxic environment behind us. However, the drama didn't end when we left the wedding venue. About a week after getting home, I received a frantic call from my mom. She was hysterical, saying Sarah's marriage had already blown up in spectacular fashion. Apparently, Sarah discovered her husband Brad had been having an affair with her best friend and maid of honor, Stacy. From what I could piece together through my mom's blubbering sobs, it sounds like the affair had been going on for months before the wedding. Stacy had even flown out for the bachelorette party and weekend and was hooking up with Brad behind Sarah's back the whole time. The way my mom told it, Sarah had found some incriminating texts and emails between Brad and Stacy the day after the wedding. When she confronted them, they both confessed everything. They had fallen in love and were planning to leave their respective spouses to be together. Just like that, Sarah's perfect marriage she had bragged about was in ruins after less than a week. The smug look was wiped off her face real fast. I will admit, after the way Sarah and my parents treated Jan and I at the wedding, there was a tiny part of me that felt a sense of perverse satisfaction at this turn of events. Like some twisted form of karma, you know? I didn't revel in it for long before the guilt set in though. Because despite the issues between Sarah and I would never want her to have to go through that level of public humiliation and heartbreak. Honestly, I felt awful for her. She may be an entitled brat, but she didn't deserve that level of betrayal from her best friend and new husband she thought she could trust. No one does. My parents were beside themselves, insisting this was all Sarah's fault for moving too fast with Brad and not properly vetting his character. They blamed themselves for enabling her every whim and not giving her perspective. It was like they had finally seen a tiny glimpse of how warped their enabling behavior had made Sarah. Not surprisingly, my parents immediately turned to me looking for support and someone to vent to. I did my best to provide a compassionate ear, but I will admit I was holding back out of self-preservation. I couldn't allow myself to get completely sucked back in as the dependable son while they criticized Sarah. For too long that dynamic had expected too much emotional labor from me. Within days, Sarah was back living at home with my parents as the divorce proceedings began to play out. From what I have heard through the grapevine, she is utterly devastated. Divorcing so quickly after such an extravagant wedding has been humiliating. Apparently, Brad cleared out their joint bank accounts and moved in with Stacy, while Sarah is now broke and living with my parents feeling disgraced. A tiny part of me thinks Sarah is finally getting a taste of what she dolled out in terms of smug entitlement all these years. But the bigger part of me just feels sad for what a mess it has all become. No one should have to go through public betrayal like that so fresh off their wedding day. My parents have been pressuring me relentlessly to come visit, give Sarah a shoulder to cry on, help her through this devastating time. But I have been resistant to get too involved. I don't want to get dragged back into their vortex of dysfunction, nor do I think it is my responsibility to help repair the damage of Sarah's mistakes. I have spoken to Sarah a couple times on the phone, offering some words of empathy and telling her I am sorry she is having to go through this. But that's as far as I am willing to go for now. Her healing is going to have to happen without me. Jan has been tremendously supportive, agreeing we need to continue establish firm boundaries. She finds satisfaction in Sarah's shocking fall from grace only in that it might finally open my parents' eyes. Maybe they will realize building someone up to be the perpetual golden child is unhealthy for everyone. Unfortunately, even after a couple months of Sarah's disastrous divorce, the drama in my family shows no signs of letting up. In fact, it has only gotten worse as Sarah has fixed herself as the perpetual victim with my enabling parents. Since she moved back in with them after Brad took everything from her, Sarah has been milking her poor me status for all it's worth. She spends her days moping around their house, barely leaving her old bedroom, while my parents wait on her hand and foot. According to my dad, she is in daily therapy dealing with panic attacks, depression, and what he calls betrayal trauma after Brad's affair. She has quickly gone from being the spoiled, entitled golden child, to the fragile, coddled wounded bird that needs constant care and support. My parents have completely bought into her act. They tell me frequently how broken she is and how they are terrified of pushing her too hard to get back on her feet. Instead, they are funding her every expense and whim, letting her wallow in self-pity endlessly. From my perspective, it seems less like genuine trauma and more like an expert-level guilt trip to manipulate my parents' sympathies. But they have always been suckers when it comes to Sarah's dramatics. The level my parents have gone to in rewarding her divorce behavior is beyond anything I could have imagined though. A couple weeks ago, my dad reached out wanting to have a family meeting to discuss updating their will and estate plans. I will admit I was a bit shocked when he invited me over and announced in front of Sarah that they planned to rewrite their will, leaving everything, the house, investments, overall estate, solely to her when they eventually pass away. Apparently, All this is because Sarah has nothing left after the divorce and they want to ensure she is taken care of when they are gone. My dad claimed it was their way of making things right after accidentally setting her up for failure by spoiling her too much growing up. I was speechless. They already paid over $30,000 for her wedding less than a year ago. And now, due to her own irresponsibility, getting married rashly, not properly vetting her husband, etc., they are going to disinherit me entirely to leave her with a windfall? After all the resentment from their past favoritism, this was a total slap in the face. When I pushed back, my mother started crying about how Sarah is so fragile right now and they can't possibly put any more on her plate. As if being divorced at 28 is the literal end of the world. It is an insult to everyone who has faced real trauma. Sarah just sat there silently with a self-satisfied smirk, eating up my parents' pampering, as they spoke about her like she was an invalid. I am completely disgusted by the display. It is clear Sarah has figured out exactly how to push my parents' buttons and manipulate them into feeling guilty. Now she has managed to position herself to cash in after draining them financially with the wedding costs. Part of me wants to just tell them fine, to go ahead and leave everything to the princess. Clearly nothing I say will make them see how perverse their enabling is. And at this point, an inheritance or not won't make much difference in my life or relationship with them. But there is another part of me, call it prideful, petty, whatever, that feels I at least need to go on record objecting to this blatant disinheritance. To not become just another chapter in Sarah's narrative of being the perpetual victim who needs to be compensated. I am not sure if it will matter, but I have asked my parents to at least agree to split their estate 50-50 between us when the time comes. Sarah will no doubt wail and cry if they give me anything, playing up her trauma. But I can't let her $30,000 wedding followed by some post-divorce pity be the sole reason to cut me out completely. This whole situation has me feeling so disheartened about my family. My parents are clearly determined to keep making the same enabling mistakes over and over when it comes to Sarah. And she knows exactly how to take advantage of their guilt. I keep trying to take the high road and not let it get to me, like Jen encourages. But seeing Sarah being rewarded yet again with their full inheritance is rubbing more salt in the wound. As if the blatant favoritism during childhood and her wedding wasn't enough. Now I get to be punished further for her own irresponsibility? There is a part of me that hopes they realize how ridiculous this is before it is too late to change things. But I am quickly losing faith that they will ever put boundaries in place with Sarah. They seem addicted to rescuing her from her own mistakes. I am not sure where this leaves me going forward. Part of me wants to just wash my hands and accept I will forever be the afterthought of my family. But another part wants to keep fighting to have basic equity, if for no other reason than self-respect. I go back and forth hourly on pulling away permanently or still trying to have a relationship with them on some level. Certainly, interactions need to be very limited for my own mental health. This is the cycle I have been caught in for years, hoping for change that never sticks. In the end, maybe cutting them off fully is the wake-up call they need to stop expecting me to be the stable, understanding son. To realize their refusal to set boundaries enables Sarah's manipulations. But I also worry going no contact will only justify their labeling of me as the problematic, difficult one. I don't know, maybe I am overthinking it all as usual. Either way, the loss of dignity has been profound. Whatever fondness I had for my family at one point is withering rapidly. The trust and hope for change is shattered. I am truly at a loss for how to deal with this never-ending saga of Sarah's entitlement and my parents' willful blindness. I know many would advise I walk away and write them off. Maybe that is what is needed to avoid being completely demoralized. I will continue leaning on Jen for objectivity and support as I try to decide next steps.